Hi, Scott Orlin with Cinema Magazine. A phenomenal new documentary is coming your way. It is called Mully. And let me tell you, it took me by surprise. So I hope you give it the chance too. And you're really going to see what this means to you. And the man responsible for it, actually the director, making his directorial debut, Scott Haze. Scott, how did Mully come to your attention? How did he get on your radar?
I had gotten to know a man in Atlanta named John Bardis. Him and his wife, John and Judy Bardis, reached out to me and said, "There's a story that I think that needs for the world needs to know." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "Will you help us tell it?" I said, "Well, I don't know what story you're talking about." So the next morning, there was a book that was delivered to my house called "Father to the Fatherless." They sent me the book, and I read the book. It was written by Paul Bogie, and I thought I was reading something of a fable, a fiction. I couldn't believe that this story was true. And I called them back immediately and I said, "Of course, I'm 1000% in. I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this story. And if I believe that the story is true fully, but I'm 1000% in." And I just couldn't believe when I read the book that people didn't know about this guy. That was the main thing. It was like reading the story of Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King or Gandhi. And I was just like, this guy can't be real. That was my initial reaction. This is so remarkable.
What I love about a lot of documentaries is we start telling one story and we end up somewhere different. And a lot of times you start with a judgment about a person going, oh, there's going to be a twist. They're going to come along. They're not exactly who we think they are. And that wasn't the case here. If anything, he became more of a saint about. So how did you navigate telling the story that showed the spectrum of human emotion, that showed the spectrum of reality, and not elevating him too much?
What he doesn't, that's the thing, is that I didn't want to lean into anything from a directorial standpoint because I just wanted this. I felt like I was documenting and I'm trying to capture, like you said, the story of a real saint, that I didn't need to put anything on it. I just told the story as it was. And, you know, he's the real deal. So there's not a lot of that I need to do that he doesn't just show up as. In every circumstance, he is that guy. He never once did anything that was out of character of who you see in the film. That's who he is.
You use an interesting device in your storytelling of where you're actually showing footage of him present day. You do flashbacks. So talk a little bit about recreating which moments that you needed to showcase and casting those people to tell that part of the past.
Right. It was that was a tricky moment in the filmmaking process because I knew that there were certain parts of our story that we needed to go into sort of a dream flashback sequence, which I've always not been a huge fan of when I watch documentaries because they can be poorly done and they can distract from the story. And I said, you know what? So I came up with a clear vision of how I wanted to approach that. And we had to cast locals because there was no actors in the area. That's not like something that people are actively pursuing out in that part of Kenya. In Nairobi there is, but not in that area. And I went through everybody. I said, I got to find somebody to play Charles. I don't know. Nobody could play Charles. Nobody had what Charles has. So one morning over breakfast, I pulled Charles aside and I said, I know you're helping us with everything because he basically turned MCF into Mullywood. He used to joke, this is now Mullywood, not Hollywood. I said, Charles, listen, I know you're doing all that for the film, but I need you to step away from your work and taking care of the family and the kids and everything you have on your plate and be an actor and play yourself in this movie. And you have to trust me. I'm going to make sure it works. And it took some convincing because he's such a busy guy, but he did it. And he stepped in. And I loved that process of working with him because at first, when we would do a scene, he didn't understand what coverage was or the fact that he thought if I had him do it again, he screwed up the first time. I was like, no, Charles, I have to edit this together, so I need multiple angles. So it was a really fun learning process, but I was blown away with how good he did playing himself in those flashbacks.
You know, for just to kind of enlighten the audience, the story we meet is this young boy who's in abject poverty, who kind of escapes on his own. Through a series of his own initiatives, he becomes this entrepreneur in first owning his own taxi, building that into a tire business, real estate, oil and gas. That in itself is just spectacular. And then he gives it all up because he realizes the greater community needs him in another way. That's just, you can't even make that up.
No, I know that's exactly the feeling I had. I read it and I heard the story. I said, can't, this has to be made up. This can't be real, but it is.
One of the things that was really intriguing to me is if you were to do that in the United States and Germany and England, there would be so much government regulation that would step in and saying, you can't have 100 kids or 1,000 kids in this facility. You can't build your own water project. What was there in the Kenyan environment that allowed him to navigate through that?
It's interesting. The government, that's a tricky question. It's very complex. The best way I can say it is now the government supports him and they understand what he's doing. And they actually, I'm creating an update video that will be available on mullymovie.com. And like we released the film, which is more up to date over what's happened since the initial launch of the film. And during the coronavirus period, the government gave 12 different professions or organizations the ability to still move around and not be under lockdown. And the government made Mully Children's Family one of them, one of the 12 in Kenya, because they finally recognize the impact that Charles is having on the greater community at large. He's affecting thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And you know, there's been a lot of tragedy this year or last year, even still going on. And the police would show up and just bring children, orphan babies, to his doorstep. And he's like, where else is this infant going to go? And he takes them. So it's been a trying year for them during coronavirus, but they've been able to be recognized and supported by the government, and the government's leaning on them at times.
There was a moment in the movie when he first kind of has that epiphany and he goes into that street area. And you hear the other people talking about he could have been killed at a moment's notice, that, you know, these people were high on drugs. And he kind of decides, okay, this is where he's going to go. And then for the rest of the documentary, I kept saying, well, is there other adversity? Are there other pushbacks that he's getting from communities? Why are you taking our kids? Or what's happening? And I never saw any of that. Was it really all that placid? Was it peaceful?
Yeah, because the kids that he was rescuing are orphan kids who most of the girls are having to prostitute themselves at 8 years old and sometimes as young as 6 just to get food. So they're, you know, and then these kids, the reason why they're on such drugs is they come from such trauma, and it's cheap. There's a certain drug that they all huff and sniff, and it destroys their brain, and they're lost. So no, there are people in the community who thought he was crazy. He was kicked out of his own church. They thought he was nuts. They didn't understand what he was doing, but he kept doing it. And he said, listen, they may not understand what I'm doing because I'm bringing these kids that might have lice and they're filthy and might have diseases and HIV around them. But those are the people we need to take care of. Those are the people that should not be left behind. And a lot of people didn't understand why he supported all 42 tribes or every gender or every religion or every faith. He's an all-encompassing guy. There's no, if you don't have the same faith as me, you're not allowed here. He is the example of what unconditional love is. And for a guy like me to watch somebody completely trust that and show up like that every step of the way is astounding to even be around, much less I get to tell that story. It's a huge responsibility that I didn't take lightly.
Was there any concern on his part? I mean, I don't know how many times he's actually watched documentaries or he knew what stories would be, but he put his full faith and trust in you. Was there any trepidation at all that he was like, I don't want you telling this part of the story?
No, because I think there's parts of the story that I did tell that he would have probably said, like, why don't we focus on something else? And I did go to those points because I knew that the family, you know, that there's a part of the film when the biological kids, his own kids, don't understand why are we not enough, or why are you shipping us to boarding school to take care of 2,000 children right now? It was a hard things for his own family that they had to go through. And I think it's cool to see them looking back on why he did that, and they would do the same now as adults.
So many documentaries eventually see an afterlife as theatrical films. Is there talk at all of turning this into a feature film?
I'm actively in the process of that as we speak. literally today. We've reached that point. I stepped away from the project, and it came back, and I'm fully in, and I know that this is the feature film is just going to be amazing, and we are super excited to get going on it, and we're actually starting as we speak.
As an audience, I was really humbled watching this because I thought the power of one voice, what somebody can do, and am I doing enough? But you spent, I don't know how long, how many months and years working on this project. What kind of enlightenment did you get?
I've been really fortunate to act in movies where I have great directors as an actor. People from Scott Cooper, I've worked with Guillermo, and all the just all these different directors, and I've had such a fortunate path in terms of like getting to work with on those projects, but none of them compare to when you are in Kibera slum, which is the most horrific slum you can imagine, and you see a 7-year-old girl who's prostituting herself, and she's lost, and she's literally sleeping on the streets, and she doesn't have shelter, and she'll have sex with anybody just to get a place to eat, some food and a place to sleep. And Charles goes over and rescues that child, and that child now has future tense put back in their vocabulary, and they can think about, I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep today, or is that grown man going to sleep with me and give me food to eat? It kind of puts in perspective what telling stories and what stories matter, and the impact that we can have as humans on another life is more valuable than anything else. So for me, it really just showed me that like my spiritual path in terms of like trying to make the world a better place, whether it's with the environment or just with our fellow humans, is just, he just changed everything about the way I think. And that just happened due to proximity, just watching that happen and roll out in front of my eyes, and being a fly on the wall and seeing him being involved in the transforming of these children's lives. It's just the purpose of what I want to do with my life is hopefully have as much of an impact as I can. I'm always a pretty high bar, but.
Okay, my last question, to pivot away to that other day job you have as an actor, you did Jurassic Dominion, right?
Yes, yes.
So I just recently interviewed Frank Marshall and talking about the complexities of having to navigate through the pandemic. As an actor, how interesting was that to start a movie, stop, go back, and have all those safety protocols in place?
I mean, for me, it was being a kid who just loved that franchise. It was a very surreal experience, the whole process, much less being in a pandemic. I remember we were shooting in Canada. I think some of my scenes were the first ones up. And there was talk on like one of the news stations about a virus that was coming. And then I was at a gas station and I bought a bunch of hand sanitizer, and I went to set and I said, guys, I saw the news, something might be happening. Here's some hand sanitizer. And everybody's like, you idiot, nothing's going to happen. We're fine. And then cut to like 3 weeks later, we're all in lockdown, and I'm getting text messages from my cast saying, thank you for the hand sanitizer. They're sold out at the local market. It was surreal to be going back to work, knowing we were the only movie in the world being shot. But I never, because of the way the producers and the studio and Colin positioned us and took care of us and took us in the process and informed us and educated us, it wasn't that crazy for me. I felt really supported, and I felt safe under the leadership around that film. So, and it was the best experience I've ever had making a movie from start to finish. So.
Well, now we have to wait to 2022 to watch it, but congratulations. And again, thank you so much. This was a powerful, powerful documentary that I obviously would have slipped through my radar, and I'm so glad it was brought to my attention. I encourage you all. It's called Mully. Scott Haze is the director, and this is Scott. Till next time.